Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Steftalks webinar. We are so happy that you are joining us today. We have a great webinar planned called Brick and Mobile. We have two great speakers, Sam and George. I will have them introduce themselves in a little bit. Throughout the webinar, go ahead and drop your questions in your question box, and we'll do a Q&A at the end. We are recording this session, so later today you will find in your inbox a link to the recording and then some key takeaways that we want you to remember about the webinar. So Sam and George, let's get started.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Sam Selim. I'm a Global Director in the Digital Innovation Business Unit at Stefanini, focused on retail and manufacturing. And with me today, I have CEO George Millard. George?
Hi, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm George Millard, CEO of MOZAIKO Stefanini, a company that develops analytics and IoT RFID technologies to simplify retail and logistic process. We integrate real-time data and use analytics for things like inventory control and supply chain performance. In summary, we are about generating efficiency, reducing costs, and improving experience of retailers.
Okay, so George, how about you and I take the role of, let's say, since you're a CEO, a stakeholder, kind of a owner, operator, or of a large retail organization. Now, I'll kind of take a perspective of a shopper throughout this presentation. But I'd like to start off with a scenario, George, and ask you a question. Have you ever been in traffic, especially pre-COVID, because, you know, we were able to get out and get around? Ever been in traffic, stuck in traffic, and to the left, you see a shopping mall, and all of a sudden, that there's a store there that reminds you or triggers the need for you to just get out of traffic, park, go over there and knock on that door to see if they're open. Has that ever happened to you, George?
Certainly did, Sam. And of course, I remember the days pre this pandemic, and I guess it happens to many of us.
It's unfortunate, but the purpose of this webinar, everybody, is to talk about how retailers can reach shoppers, taking a look at before, how it used to be, a look at present during COVID, and a look into after COVID.
Well, and just adding up a little bit, Sam, here. I think we're talking about digitalization. At the end of the day, it's a buzzword, and it was occurring. We're all very familiar with the term. Everybody was moving around. And the other day, a CEO of a big manufacturer retailer told me, COVID is not quite a game changer. It's more of an accelerator. And I added to that. And it's also a big stress test, on our retailers, supply chain, a stress test on online presence, especially of those that hadn't so much of an online presence. And of course, it's a test on the ability to deliver and to connect to consumers.
Absolutely, and I can echo those thoughts too. I mean, I remember the pre-COVID days and in talking to high fashion retailers in the US and around the world. And we were already thinking and talking and reimagining the digital strategy for retail. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, COVID happens. And for many, it was a validation, a sense of urgency to reach their shoppers. But let's for a minute stick with this glass window scenario. And what if, George, that glass door that you're knocking on all of a sudden becomes, instead of a closed window of crisis, it becomes a window of opportunity? I know COVID is a bad thing around the world, and I'm sure you're in Brazil, right? Right, George?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, how has COVID affected retail in Brazil, for example?
hammered a lot. At least many of the big retailers here had like 90% reduction on sales. Stores closed all over the place, and much of the Brazilian retailers are still closed. We have some openings on the south of the country, but the majority are closed. Their physical stores are all closed down, and they've wandering around how to manage things.
Sure, sure. Well, I live in a small town in North Carolina that's next to a big town, and a lot of the stores here have closed, and I don't know if a lot of them will reopen. But let's for a moment imagine that glass door, that glass window that we're knocking on, asking the question, "Are you open?" Let's imagine if we could remove that window. That now becomes painless, right? That
Sure.
that door, that
Sure,
window,
Sam.
painless. You move that pane of glass, it's painless. It's now an open gateway, right? I'm going somewhere with this, George. Follow me.
Okay,
So
but just sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
yeah, so if we can remove that glass door and turn it into a digital interface, wouldn't that take us a step closer from brick and mortar to brick and mobile, George?
Certainly does. I think that's the idea. And with this pandemic as an accelerator, it just made things a little bit more clear to everybody that was kind of thinking about it. And and again, as it happened, and it happened quickly, we had the problem that everybody wasn't quite prepared. And adding to this, uh, so what I'm trying to say at the end of the day is that the good is enemy of the optimum. If you have to do something, everybody has to move, and it's better to do something and fast than nothing. So we're again in the MVP territorium here. Do something, do it as you're working, and fix it on the run. That's the main point of view that uh, the majority of the retailers and clients are talking to us are saying we have to do something, even it's not the best thing, the best answer.
I like that. So in removing that pane of glass and turning this window of crisis into a window of opportunity, couldn't we also say, George, that people already have that window of opportunity in their hands? This right here is that window. So what we have is the ability for retailers now and in the coming future to be able to use that window actually to view a post-COVID environment. Um, the size of that opportunity, in my opinion, George, and I'd like to hear yours, the size of that opportunity for retailers today is equal to the size of their digital strategy and their digital presence. We can call this omnipresence. This right here is just a channel. It could be an iPhone, it could be a Android, a laptop, an iPad. It could be an IoT device, a smart wearable device. What are your thoughts on that, George?
Well, I've heard a lot about omni-channel, and this I think it's the real omni-channel test of COVID here. Uh, Consumer is king, and now more than ever. And what I've heard, it's a little, I think like a step beyond omni-channel. That's anywhere, anyone commerce. So it's physical stores help you with user experience, of course, and retailers should seize every opportunity to gather as much information as possible from that experience. But what we're talking now, it's about how to transform the go from that digital world, and of course I think analytics has a lot to offer us on us in terms of enhancing that experience. We're also, if we're talking here as you put my hat as the CEO of a retailer or owner of a business. Well, one of the things also I have to mention here is how is my supply chain working? Where are the bottlenecks at the end of the day? And do I have the correct inventory visibility, the right product, the right place, right time? So I guess I can summarize it in a word. It's visibility, and technology and digitalization should help us to have this supply chain visibility as best as we can.
Sure. Excuse me. So what I'm hearing, I mean, one of the biggest challenges now in this whole social distancing era that we're in is retailers need to get beyond that social distancing challenge and into a social connecting arena. And omni-channel, omnipresence, and having that digital interface in every shopper's hand, every potential shopper that you want, means you're able to create mind share. Why is that important? Because mind share precedes market share. And having the ability to connect mind share to market share is how you do that is with a process, right, George? Having the right process. I've heard you're a big process guy, right, George?
Yes, I love the consumer journey experience, etc. And I think it's the consumer journey now should be a comfort journey also. It's not just because it's digital has to be full of pain like you're talking. Let's remove the pain. And I see more and more retailers being pushed to add services, more services, and not only sell the product. So it's kind of a drift from product and brands to experience and channels. How do you see it, Sam?
Yeah, sure. So, going back to that window and the customer journey, I like what you just said about the comfort journey. Going back to that window from a retailer, or I'm sorry, from a shopper's perspective, I want to know that who I'm dealing with or shopping with understands four things. And you can liken that to the four sides of that window that we removed. One side is people. Everything starts with people in retail and ends with people, right, George? And so you have people, product, preference. You have to understand their preferences, their preference models, and you got to have a process, which goes back to how to connect mind share to market share with a process. What we have here, everybody, is a basic customer journey map. And on the bottom, it says physical touch points. Top is digital touch points. So if you think of the brick and mortar environment as the physical and the brick and mobile environment as the digital, what we have here is a straight path, a digital method, model, and map to go to pierce every potential shopper's mindset and create mind share through awareness all the way through to loyalty, social loyalty and brand loyalty and customer sentiment and customer affinity. All these things can be connected together, creating one straight path through a digital method, a model, and really it's a map to the right customer at the right time on any device, anywhere, at any time. But let's go a step further, George. I'm going to take the diagram we just had and go to this any device omni-channel mindset. If we had the ability to access or to enter the home willingly, of course, of any potential shopper on any device, anytime, anywhere, anyone, what we have now, instead of a one-to-many approach, which has kind of been the legacy for retailers, is postal board or TV ad or radio ad, one-to-many. That's one-to-many. Now, what we need with this COVID era, and actually what we were working on right before COVID, is a one-to-one approach, which makes it personable, being able to acquire and accumulate insightful data that can help us then develop a shopper profile that can help us meet the expectations and of that potential one shopper, that individual shopper sitting in that one home in a small town somewhere. And then once that person receives what they're looking to receive that they ordered, all of a sudden what we have is also the ability for them to reach, and I don't do selfies, George. Don't get the wrong. Once you buy that shirt and it arrives and you did it all online, you're going to take selfies and you're going to tell your social sphere of influence, the social mesh. So now, taking this a step further, we can take that digital method, that map and that model, and turn it into a promotional upsell and increasing customer sentiment, loyalty, and satisfaction.
Let me interrupt you here, Sam.
Sure.
Here's where I think it's kind of tricky. How to get that human touch on the digital experience? I think that's one of the main questions here. How to make it the leap from the digital experience to a consumer experience to a customer journey in this ecosystem. That's one of the things that it's always on my mind here, and how to make it seamless.
George, that's something that I've had a lot of retailers ask me is how do you take a brick and mortar environment of feeling and touching things and seeing them and turning it into and then going straight from that into all stores closed and everyone's quarantined and you can't look at anything or touch anything, right? So you're absolutely right, George, is how do you get the human touch? And there's a lot of technologies out there. I'm sure you've seen a lot, George. I know you guys are doing some really unique things with technologies that help with that. I've seen some technologies also that take the data points that are all out there in cloud and data world and bring them into a model of virtual reality, augmented reality, even artificial intelligence, where you can now see things via a digital device and experience things that you weren't able to experience before. So with the whole COVID situation that we're in, the COVID crisis, a lot of people are just surfing the internet or surfing different devices, looking at things and realizing, like, you know what? I didn't realize that I could actually see how this looks on me by entering my dimensions or measurements and actually seeing how everything fits, hangs, how loose it might be, how tight it might be, etc. So really developing that process is going to take building the right digital method, the right model, the right map, and having a way to measure whether or not that digital strategy is working. You might want to know, like you said a little bit ago, George, start somewhere, right? So if we start somewhere, at least we can then measure where and how to get to the next spot. Right, George?
Right. We're just adding that technology strategy should go together with execution. Otherwise, it's only dreams, Sam. You understand that you have to choose your digital strategy, but you also have to implement it. And sometimes you have to implement it in baby steps and stages, but you have to do it. So just remembering that, putting the feet back together on the ground. Technology and strategy are great, but you have to implement it.
Absolutely. And the good thing about what you said is, and along with overlaying it with digital technology and strategy, is you can always fine tweak things. You can't always change where you put a store, the brick store. You already poured cement, you already built a building there, right? Well, maybe it's the bad intersection. Maybe they build something right across the street from you, like you place a fast food restaurant at a corner of the intersection, and your biggest competitor does the same thing because you already did all the work. You did all the demographics and all the studies. You figured out where to put it. But then your competitor comes in, puts one right across the street. Well, you can't really just lift that store up and put it somewhere else or change that physical reality. However, in a digital world, you can with agility, you can change your strategy to fit fit all the data you're gathering, what it's telling you, and you can then develop a strategy or tweak it to remap a path to maybe it's messaging, wording, maybe it's your on-demand model, maybe it's the customization engine, maybe whatever it is, it can tell you. All the data can tell you. So at the end of the day, whatever model you have in place, George, whatever technology, really has to do three things, I think, from a shopper's perspective. It has to be able to attract the most probable shopper, that most probable shopper profile. It has to be able to attract, has to be able to interact with that most probable shopper, and it has to have the ability painlessly, back to that window, right, removing that window, it has to have the ability to transact business. So attract, interact, transact. And from a shopper's perspective, George, and I know from a stakeholder perspective, how do you put that all together? How do you make it all work, right? I'm sure you hear that a lot. So from a stakeholder's perspective, a retailer, back to that pane of glass, right? The four sides. We got to develop a precise digital method that we can tweak, but really digital precision is the ability to have the right omni-channel, multi-channel approach with the right portals, the right messaging, and you have to have the digital precision to reach the right person at the right time anywhere, right? Now, preference model. You have to be able to understand what that customer prefers. Maybe that potential shopper usually prefers a medium-sized sweater versus a small, or a knit versus a woven, whatever it is. You have to understand the preference model. You also have to understand how to make the whole experience personable, because through personable and personalization, you can make it memorable. And only by doing those things, personable, memorable, can you really have that person at the end of that journey then turn around and say, I'm going to tell all my friends, I'm going to promote you guys because you guys did a great job. It fits. I love it. The experience was great. It was painless. And George, what we're doing here is, and as I mentioned, taking this a step further is in helping retailers find that shopper. You got to have the right digital method, model, map, etc., and digital strategy. But what if someone like myself, I'm just a shopper, I know I want a pair of jeans, but I'm not really sure who makes jeans, because I'm a guy. I personally don't know who makes jeans, right? But if you could show me a way to find you, okay, without me realizing that, without me having to do a lot of research, all of a sudden you have built a method that goes back to you and makes my journey easy and painless. What do you think about that, George?
Well, I think it's great. I certainly do.
What I'm trying to get to here, George, is the 360. Because now what we've done is we've tied the front to the back, and I know there's a lot of stuff in the middle, right? Logistics, supply, operations, demand. But if we can take that whole digital method from the front, how to start the digital strategy, how to get to that bell curve shopper, and walk them through a streamlined process that's memorable and personable and engaging, interactive, etc. And at the end, have a customer loyalty model where we can read and gain insight into their brand affinity, brand sentiment, brand loyalty. Then maybe they'll be able to tell all their friends, etc., etc. But between front and back, there's a lot of stuff in the middle, George, like logistics, supply, demand. What can you tell us about that from your perspective?
Yeah, that's where I was trying to get through that. If, of course, there's a whole new world out there, a lot of dreams, etc. But sometimes you have to put them on the ground and how to execute. And again, technology, of course, analytics, RFID, IoT, a lot of technologies out there give us a lot of tools on there to work with it. But in the end, what we need is, I'm going to stress this word here, it's visibility in the whole supply chain. I think Drucker said that you can only manage what you control, what you see. So
Yep.
that's big. And you need speed and accuracy, productivity, especially on COVID times. You have to do more with less, and you have to automate, and you have to do it quickly and accurately. So all of that together, you have to choose the right tools in terms of technologies and work binding them together with a good analytics, artificial intelligence, maybe, but analytics in the end to quickly respond and correct courses.
Sure.
The main concerns of some of our friends here with retailers, etc., is when you divide the world in over the counter and behind the counter. What you were talking a lot about things over the counter when you have the interface with the client directly. But to get there, there's a lot of other things that have to be done behind the counter, and that's where if you streamline your supply chain, you streamline your operations, you get it with low costs, but again, with precision, with accuracy, it really makes all the difference. Let's talk a lot about in terms of a specific example here on going digital. Of course, it's wonderful if you can do everything with a click, but then again, well, you're gonna buy a shoe, and you love that shoe. You ask for a size 10, it arrives, and well, it's a little bit too big. I should have asked for a 9 and 9.5, and I missed it. So reverse logistics, returns here are a main problem in terms of retailers in general, but specifically in the digital world. I think without the feel and touch, you're going to have more of them. So you have to use technology analytics to first gather as much as information as you can from these clients to get it right on the first time, or at least on the second or the third. And if you don't get it right, you have to work out your system so it doesn't. It's not. It should the customer journey just because of a return shouldn't be painless. Shouldn't be a pain. It should also have some interesting opportunity to show a little bit more about your company, that you care, you return things, you're fast, you even give back the money if so. So yeah, sometimes a bad experience can be turned into a good experience. So, using technology to make it as seamless and productive as possible behind the counter. And if you have any kind of problem, being able to use analytics, using artificial intelligence to rapidly correct that, I think that's also very, very interesting and key for our friends here, retailers and manufacturers, and all everybody in the supply chain.
Sure. And you mentioned all the different parts. It sounds very daunting, right? There's a lot of parts to the puzzle, and really what we're looking at is simplifying it so that we can start putting a strategy in place, and then have that strategy be kind of a self-healing, self-growing strategy because of the agility that's inherent to a digital model. So you mentioned a few things about technologies, George, and we also mentioned that everything really starts and ends with people. So if you look at three things that have happened over the last year, 2 years, 2.5 years, it's kind of like three clouds have come together to create the perfect storm. Before COVID, all COVID did was validate this. But the three things that were happening is the social mesh was exploding over the last few years, all right, several years. The analytic mesh, we went into big data analytics, data science, and all the ways of collecting data and making it intelligible, taking raw data, turning into intelligible data, usable data, visible, measurable, and actionable data. That started happening. And then the digital world, the digital mesh, connecting microservices with digital displays, etc. That all came together, and that really is what's created this brick and mobile or digital transformation, if you will. And so what does this all sit on? So you mentioned artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, Internet of Things. These are all things coming together too. You know, we have 5G, right? Is getting ready to happen, I guess, soon. So people are going to have way more power on a cell phone, okay, with way more data points out there that can be used in an intelligible way through a process that can then take your brand, this product, this color, this size to this person at 3 a.m. on their favorite device with one touch, and they can transact business. So it all starts with people, ends with people. Social, mobile, analytics, cloud. I call that SMAC stack, right? And so George, in terms of some of the technologies, what have you seen? Does this kind of line up with what you've seen?
Yes, we use a lot of RFID also because today this kind of technology has reached price points that they're very convenient. Retailers have seen it, and many of them are telling me they're now it's getting easier. And I remember a phrase from a friend of mine, and that's he always said to me, it's not getting easier, you're getting better and better at it. And of course, with all this technology that we have at our disposal, it seems to be getting easier, but we're that getting better on it. So it's just a question of using the right technology with the right people. Of course, people are fundamental, but the right technology, the right people, right strategy implemented, and then make a turn and correct course, and with the experience, with time, you really make it easier and get better at it.
And I totally agree with you, George. Nothing, I'm telling you from personal, nothing's getting easier, but we're all getting better. You're right. Technology is getting better. And one of the key things is shoppers are becoming more aware or more knowledgeable of how to buy. And if they're not enabled to buy from retailer A, but they are enabled to buy from retailer B just because of the convenience model and the customer journey, what are they going to do? You know, they may as well just go with B. So the agility to be competitive, you can actually leapfrog with all this technology, innovation, and the way you reimagine how you go to market. You can actually leapfrog some of the biggest competitors out there, some of the biggest names. So you could be almost a new player in retail worlds and have the right digital strategy in place, and all of a sudden you've created the right mind share and the right pockets to gain market share. It goes back to our first slide in that pane of glass, right, George?
Right, and you don't have to get it right in the first time. We can always, you have to have the analytics, you have to have the data and the information to very quickly and available, so you can correct course. I think that's one of the basics of it. Don't be afraid of missing out. I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid of failure, of error, but it's just a process. If you have the information quickly and available, you can correct these errors and very rapidly adjust your course.
Absolutely. And so back to that window that we knocked out of that door, right? The four sides. So from a retailer perspective, there's four things, in my opinion, that need to be addressed from a very simplistic viewpoint. And that is, it ties into what shoppers are thinking. So you want to be thinking what they're thinking, imagining the whole journey for them and with them, right? So if we can figure out through digital transformation technology, digital strategy, instead of the brick and mortar mentality, kind of remove those walls, right? And use that window as a window into the future, creating four things: an ability to gain precise insights, analytics, the right information at the right time. We talked about the right, any device, anytime, anywhere. How about the right information at the right time so it's usable through precise digital methods, models, and maps? Then we want to be able to gain the insights from shopper preferences in the right geographies, demographics, et cetera, but develop the right preferences, tie them together, and make and have that whole one-to-one digital personalization models in place, such that the net result of all that is great customer sentiment, brand affinity, brand loyalty, which then catapults a retailer into the world of social promotions, 4 stars, 5 stars. People are going to ask their friends first. So you put those four things together, and what we've done, George, is develop, instead of that window we're knocking on and asking, hey, you open? Now we're saying, here's your window of opportunity. Put these four things together and go forth and prosper. Right, George?
Yeah, Sam, that gives us brick and mobile. So,
Brick and mobile, yep. So now that we've talked about all this, when and how should a retailer start thinking this way, George?
well, it's absolutely now, Sam. If it was now before, now it's absolutely now.
You know, I love the term now and wow, because if you think about it, that's what it boils down to. It starts with a shopper, it ends with a shopper, and through that little journey, they wanted a couple of things. They wanted something now, and when they get it, you want to hear them say, wow, right? Simple, now and wow.
Wow, just of course, but again with the retailer's hat here, the businessman, big pressure points today are cash flow and bottom line. So technology, of course, with right strategy and execution, gives us the tools for retailers, for logistics operators to streamline their operation and basically to provide the visibility and the whole supply chain, increase the productivity, accuracy, and very important real-time feedbacks that we're talking about a lot in terms of analytics to fix and adjust the deviation very, very quickly. Yep. So that's for me. I think it's as the bottom line, it's smart retail, smart supply chain. It's transformation from brick and mortar to brick and mobile.
And unfortunately, the COVID situation has really taught us a lot. But again, we as humans, we adapt and we move forward. So now, and the goal would be an amazing and memorable experience for the shopper, the target shoppers, and putting those together through a digital process and methodology that can help you rethink, reimagine the whole journey, the whole process, and the whole go-to-market strategy. Really reinvent yourself as a retailer for the post-COVID era. You okay with that, George?
Sure, yeah. That's the bottom line.
Okay. Well, I'm. Go ahead, George.
No, I think we nailed it already. I think open up for questions. What do you think?
Sure, absolutely. We're open for questions. Thanks for your time. And George, it's great always talking to you.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Greg and Sam. We do have a couple questions. In your opinion, how is the consumer mindset shifting during COVID-19?
Okay, sure. So, great question. The consumer mindset has turned, in my opinion, what I've seen has turned into, okay, well, I haven't really. A couple of things have happened. One is the people that haven't really been using a lot of online shopping. They weren't like George said. They were the ones that would go into a store, touch, feel, and decide what they want. Now they're finding where they have to adopt or be open to exploring the options available online, because realistically, everyone carries a cell phone. It's at the end of everyone's arm. So if that's, you can get closer to a shopper now than ever before, even through COVID. So really, even though there's social distancing, there's there's social connections, there's emotional connections that can be made any time of day, at home, anywhere, at the convenience of a shopper, a consumer. So the mind shift has been, I'm just going to drop into the store, knock, knock, kind of grab what I want and leave. Now has turned into, well, I can't go to the store. Let me explore this whole online thing. Oh, wow. Okay, my friends are telling me they bought this online and arrived the next day. Let me see if oh, it does work. Oh, I do like it. So that's the biggest shift I've seen, is the openness to explore. And that's where retailers can also tie into that mind shift. Does that answer your question, whoever?
Yes, it does. Great job. I think we have time for one more. What should stores do to survive COVID-19?
Oh, I can take a crack at that. Well, first of all, well, I think we started with that. Do something, even if it's not the perfect strategy, perfect technology, but move on to some kind of digitalization, online presence. If you don't have your online presence, there's a lot of marketplaces out there that you can hook up and do something about it. There are some stores. There's a case here in Brazil, for example, that the stores were turned into mini distribution centers, so you can optimize your last mile, optimize your supply chain, and at the end of the day, do a cheaper and faster delivery. I think that's also a big problem with who's doing the leap from brick and mortar to mobile. It's delivery, the cost of it, and the differences. But there's a lot of companies out there that you can subcontract. A big company, a big retailer here in Brazil bought an operation like that. That's like an Uber like last mile operation. But basically, take care of your suppliers. Of course, if you cancel everything, you won't have inventory, and then it's going to be like a domino falling. So take care of your people. A lot of retailers here in Brazil, I think in the US, are turning their salesperson into social sellers using simple tools like WhatsApp or something like that, and putting them to work even from home. So there's a lot of small things that can be done very quickly, and of course you can move up with this small steps into more sophisticated technology adoption, control of your inventory, control of tracking with RFID, with artificial intelligence. But you can do it in steps, and of course, correcting your strategy as you go on. But the best thing to do is move. If you stay, there's no way to get out of it. So, you have something to add, Sam?
No, I agree. You got to do something, and At the end of the day, everything comes back to people. A retailer should take care of their people, their customers, their vendors, their suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. But to find some sort of digital strategy, it might be a mini strategy. It might be not a complete. That's the other thing. You don't have to have a complete transformation. Transformation happens in pieces, if you will. Maybe it might just be a new way to attract local shoppers on one type of new product, and you kind of test it, measure it, do an A/B test, see what messaging works, and track. All the data has to be visible, measurable, and actionable, so you can be able to do something with it at some point. And then you grow on that, you build on that by like George said, is you tweak as you go and you build on it. So that's all I would add, George.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for the questions. We are just at our time, so we will stop here. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we did record this session with the Q&A, so you will be getting a link to the recording with some takeaways from the webinar. Again, we'd like to thank you, and we hope to see you at our next one. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend, your long weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Thank everybody that's watching us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. All right. Bye-bye.